Welcome. I am Susan Phelan, an Air Force veteran and the founder and president of Academy Women. Academy Women is a 501c3 nonprofit organization launched in 2003 to bring together our community of American military and veteran women leaders from all services and commissioning sources for mentoring, training, and growth opportunities. Our belief is that through community, we achieve our highest potential by sharing research, insights, and lessons learned to help tackle the unique challenges we face as service leaders. Thank you all for joining today. Before I introduce our speakers, I would like to welcome you also to join us for our Officer Women Leadership Symposium virtual series, which is an 8-month event tied to the theme of Power of Connection. These monthly sessions explore how meaningful connections to oneself, a community of warriors, and the world empower us with the insights and skills to lead with impact. If you are considering a career transition or know somebody who is, be sure to explore our career transition tab on our website, militaryowls.org. We're especially proud to offer you free access to our virtual engagement center, which is a 24/7 always-on platform where members of the military community can gain access to important resources, register for upcoming events, and connect with hiring managers of top-tier friendly organizations. We are also excited to announce registration is open for the 2025 Career Coaching Workshop, which will be held on November 7th in Arlington, Virginia. This event is an entire day of workshops and discussions led by career coaches and industry experts. This event also offers opportunities to connect in person with hiring managers from top caliber military-friendly organizations interested in meeting and employing military women leaders. To support your career transition work throughout the year, in anticipation of our annual career coaching workshop, we offer a monthly webinar series and the Virtual Engagement Center, which is a 24/7 always-on platform. For today's event, it is my pleasure to welcome Leidos as our presenting partner on the topic of Mastering the Job Hunt 101. Leidos first stood in support of Academy Women's mission in 2016. We are so grateful to have this amazing team of presenters with us today. On that note, I am honored to welcome Therese Dotson, who is a U.S. Navy veteran and senior recruiter at Leidos, as well as Guzman, who is an Army veteran, talent acquisition recruiter, and Leidos at the Leidos Innovation Center, and Alex Verhulst, who is corporate talent acquisition military program manager at Leidos. So we have a real treat planned for you today. Let's get started. Please join me in welcoming our esteemed presenters to the virtual stage. Enjoy the discussion, everyone. Alex, over to you.
Thanks, Susan. Thank you, everybody, for joining today and for giving us the opportunity to present to you. So I'm really happy to be joined by a couple of my colleagues here in talent acquisition, who Susan just announced, and I'm going to let each of them introduce themselves here shortly. The plan today is we are going to quickly introduce all three of ourselves. We have an introduction slide for each of us. Then we're going to share with everybody some pretty basic and high-level information about Leidos, and then really transition into what we've put together, the three of us, along with Academy Women, as some best practices and some tactics to employ while you're looking for, a position, a career here at Leidos. And a lot of these same tactics and techniques can honestly be used, anywhere in your job search. We're going to have some items to avoid when you're going through, or just some things to keep in mind as you go through your job search. And then finally, we're going to wrap it up with a quick demonstration of how to navigate our career site and kind of demo that in real time and walk through using some filters and finding a position, and then detailing out some of what to look for in a particular job posting as far as information, what information you can glean from a job posting, prior to even applying. And then after that, we'll open it up to any questions that we have. So with that being said, I want to be, cognizant of time here and go ahead and get started. I'll introduce myself first, and then I'll hand it over to my two colleagues here to introduce each of themselves. All right, so my name is Alex Verhulst, as Susan mentioned at the top. I run and manage our military program here at Leidos. I work in the corporate side of talent acquisition. So we'll talk a little bit about how we've structured, and I'll let Therese and Yari both mention kind of the sectors or the organizations they support, the business areas they support here at Leidos. But we're basically broken up into 5 different sectors. And one component that has a through line through all of our sectors and all of the work that we perform and everybody within talent acquisition is the corporate side and our corporate run programs. And one of those is our military veteran program. Specifically, our charter is to help transitioning service members, veterans, military spouses, not just in finding a job or an opportunity here at Leidos, but also in providing best practices out to the community and engaging with, the military community at large, in helping to provide recommendations and suggestions for, for job search, for career advancement, and also at the same time, ensuring that Leidos maintains our reputation as kind of a best-in-class military veteran, military spouse employer. There's a little bit about me. I've been in talent acquisition for nearly 2 decades, in government contracting that entire time. And I just celebrated my 14th year here at Leidos. I'll give a quick history lesson of Leidos in a couple slides, but I've been here through name changes and spinning off work, acquiring work, and I can say that over the last decade or so, we've seen nothing but consistent growth, and really have positioned ourselves, just with another recent acquisition here just a couple weeks ago, as an organization that continues to win and acquire new business supporting the federal government, and continues to grow. So my contact information is there. I will certainly provide that in the chat area as well if anybody wants to copy it down that's here live. And with that being said, anybody can reach out. You can certainly connect with me on LinkedIn. At the very least, send me a quick LinkedIn request so that way you can always find me in the future. But that being said, I'm going to advance the slides and hand things over to, give me one moment, please. Let me see if I can, there it goes. All right, just a slight hiccup there. I believe Yari should be next coming up on the screen. So Yari, if you're able to, please introduce yourself and talk a little bit about your background real quick.
Yari,
Can you
we
guys?
can't hear you. So I'm not sure if you have your audio muted or your video off.
Well, while we wait, let's do this. While we wait for Yari, let me jump forward to Therese to introduce herself, and then we'll see if we can get Yari back online here in a moment. So Therese, why don't you go ahead and I'll see if Yari can jump on after you're done.
Yeah, absolutely. Hello, everybody. My name is Therese Dotson, and I am a recruiter with the health and civil sector here at Leidos. A little bit about me, I have about 25 years of HR and TA experience, talent acquisition, over 15 of those years working directly with government contracting and the DoD. I am a Navy veteran, started at Leidos back in 2019 and started in the defense group. Now I'm transitioned over to the health and civil sector over in 2021. I work with the Naval Health Research Team and a classified federal agency, and it's all under the umbrella of the Health and Human Performance Division. And overall, with my background, I have worked with the intel community, DoD, DOS, across a wide variety of specialties, including military aviation, tactical ops, foreign national staffing, and then now supporting the warfighter readiness and federal healthcare. So all across the board. I don't know, Yari may have lost signal, and if you'd like, we can, if we need to move forward, I can cover her parts for her and give her a chance to get back on. Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
So I can jump back and let Yari introduce herself, and then yeah, we'll move forward after that. So Yari, go ahead.
All right. Can y'all hear me?
I can.
All right, perfect. Well, sorry for that hiccup there. I think I just lost connection. As Alex mentioned, my name is Yari Guzman. I've been in talent acquisition and human resources for 10 plus years now, 4 of them here at Leidos. I currently serve as a talent acquisition recruiter, supporting our Leidos Innovation Center, which is the research and development hub for Leidos. Specifically, I support 2 divisions, the Advanced Sensing and Emergent Technologies and Information and Data Sciences division. So bulk of those positions pretty much cover various skill sets across research and development, science and technology, and engineering. And as mentioned, I proudly served in the United States Army for 8 years as an HR specialist.
Thank you, Yari.
Yeah.
All right, so we're just going to jump right ahead here. What we're going to actually do, I think when I kick things off at the top, I kind of inversed it, but we're going to cover our best practices and our recommendations of things to avoid here first at the initial part of the presentation. And then on the back end, we're going to go through some information about Leidos, and then we'll go over and do a demo of the career site. But that way, if anybody can't stay on for the full hour, or if we run over the hour, at the very least, you're getting our best practices and our advice to you as far as your job search, or for anybody that's viewing this recording, they'll get this right up front. And then they can learn a little bit more about Leidos if they'd like to stay on or advance forward. So let's start at the top here. And Therese or Yari, if either of you are aware of who we wanted to kind of tackle which topic here, I think I had the 2 of you on this slide. So if you want to go ahead, and then I think I catch on the next slide, there's a few other items that I'll go over. But Yari, I think we're going to start with you.
Yes.
Okay.
Awesome. Yes. So doing your company research, which sounds pretty straightforward, but to unpack that a little bit, gaining an understanding of the company's mission, values, their products, their services really does add to the overall experience when you're interacting with recruiters, when you're having hiring manager interactions. The interview flows a little bit better than to, lead in with, here's my skill set. Come in with a little bit of framework of what that company does. It shows you're prepared, it shows enthusiasm, and honestly sets you apart as a competitive applicant versus someone who maybe didn't do much of the homework of understanding. It also allows you to understand, hey, is this a good fit for me? Do the values, do the products, do the services, does the overall mission align with what I want professionally within my growth at this said company and my next opportunity? I always encourage folks to not only look at the company website, but follow companies on LinkedIn. There are so many great latest and greatest innovations and postings that companies do that get you a little bit more of insight of what they're doing, maybe what acquisitions, maybe what new products or matter, but allows you to look at a little bit of insight on what they're doing. Also allows you to engage in any of the comment section. Industry leaders, recruiters, hiring managers are always in those comments. That's a good way to kind of segue into the next point here for networking, connecting. Connect with those recruiters that you see, with those hiring managers, with industry peers. Also connect with all 3 of us. Please do send us a message. Increasing your network increases the visibility across all recruiters, across different companies. That's a nice way to honestly get some passive candidates and active candidates. Oftentimes folks say, I'm not actively looking. I'm not, don't want to get on LinkedIn, but that's a great way. Do it passively, connect with folks, look at the trends that are happening, see what new items are coming along, staying abreast of the newest and greatest of those companies, and having those relationships and building that rapport with recruiters really do help in the long run.
All right. And then I think,
yep.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I think we're going to jump over to Therese for the next couple, or at least the next one. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So managing salary expectations. This is always a big question with every job seeker. So when you are looking for a job, do your research, have a salary range in mind. Keep the range between 5,000 to 10,000. Our positions on our job postings list salary ranges. These can be very broad, so you need to consider the salary range first. I wanted to provide a little bit of insight on this just to kind of clarify that, because I know it's a little confusing when you first look at it. So a couple years ago, states mandated salary transparency. So on our job postings, you'll see a large range of 50,000 or more. That is not a starting salary per se. There is a blurb on the job posting that explains that, but a lot of people miss that. So just to keep that in mind, and I know, human nature, if you were looking at that range and you say, well, I'm going to go for the top number, that may not be realistic. So definitely have your salary in mind, have it a realistic expectation. I think the create and review job alerts was mine as well. So I can go ahead and jump over there. On our career page, there is an option to create a job alert. If you go on to the page, you put in your filters. If there is more than one page at the end of that, it gives you the option to create that job alert. So this gives you an advantage. If there's nothing that you're interested at that moment, you will receive notifications once new jobs are posted that are that fit your criteria that you selected. And you can go in and create, multiple job alerts. If you're looking for just remote positions, maybe you're considering that, or maybe a position in San Diego, you can do that as well. Connecting with recruiters early on to ensure you have multiple points of contact to follow up on any applications. This goes back to LinkedIn. When you're looking for recruiters, I know that it's, if you see a Leidos recruiter, you think, well, they're a Leidos recruiter. They work across all, fields, all sectors, but you really need to look for points of contact that work in your, have similar backgrounds or work in the field that you're interested in, so that they would have relevant job postings and information on what you're looking for. And then with that, begin tailoring your resume early in your job search and get feedback from that. That'll go back to the experts in that field. They can let you know, what you can adjust, what they're looking for, and tailor it to each one of your positions.
All right.
And that's it.
Thank you. And then Therese, I think you had the next one, and then I'm going to finish this out here with the next two.
Yeah, absolutely. So there is a website I highly recommend that you visit if you are just starting your transition into the civilian workforce. So it's called My Next Move for Veterans. You can go on there, search under, search different ways. You can use your military MOS or your rating, or you can search by occupation keywords. And it actually translates that into civilian careers. And for each one of those job titles, it will give you, these aren't hard and fast rules, but it'll give you a great general guideline on knowledge, skills, abilities that you need to perform the job, technology that's used, education required for the role. And again, it's not a hard and fast rule. So if it says a bachelor's or a master's is required, that's just a guideline on that. Some general salary information that you can use when you're doing your research, and then other job suggestions to explore that are similar that you may not have thought of. So it's really a great resource to kind of start building your resume or think about your career path.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Therese. Thank you, Yari, for covering those topics there. I'll close this out here with a couple more kind of suggestions and recommendations. The first is company referral programs. So when we transition over and demo the career site towards the end of this webinar today, I'll show you on our career site, there's a link for our employee referral program, external, I should say, referral program. And I'll show you kind of what that looks like. So, we're kind of unique here at Leidos in that we have both an employee referral program and we have an external referral program. So you can be referred or refer individuals, even if you're not a Leidos employee. Most companies of any significant size will have some form of, at the very least, an employee referral program. So I certainly recommend, you look at leveraging something like that at any prospective employer you're looking at. If the first thing, right, is to determine who that or, somebody that you may know like second or third hand, right, works at any organization that you're kind of targeting. And then determine, okay, does this organization have a referral program? Can I leverage it, right? But even if it's, say, a smaller organization or they just don't have an official employee referral program, you're still networking, right? You're still getting referred by name, by reputation. It can be sometimes as simple as knowing somebody who floats your resume to the right person at the right time, and suddenly you're getting a phone call or an email about, a potential opportunity. So at a company like Leidos or our size, right, that has official channels, I definitely recommend leveraging and taking advantage of those. But it certainly doesn't mean you can't still also reach out to people within the organization, and let them know you're looking, let them know you're getting out of the service, right? Just make sure you're taking advantage of the network and the reputation you've built over your career in the military, and then, leveraging that out in the in the industry or in the community that you're looking to move into for your civilian career. And external referrals are great too, because you can have someone refer you, externally, and then you can go back, you can turn around and refer them externally, right? So you can kind of set something up where if you know anybody who's also looking, you can just refer each other from an external standpoint. So like I said, I'll show that when we get over to our demo, so you can just kind of see what it looks like. But certainly there's a lot of great, different and great high-level programs that organizations will have to help promote and market and push candidates to our recruiting team. And the referral program, military program, these are all just examples of those types of high-level programs that you can leverage, right? As a former service member, as a veteran, and then referral program is something that, really anyone can take advantage of, but, far fewer people do than you may think. So certainly take the extra time and effort to do that. And the last bullet here kind of ties everything together that we already talked about. And that's just be proactive, right? Don't wait to hear back. Don't wait for a company to contact you. Being proactive from like a macro scale is really identifying the companies that you're interested in ahead of time, finding points of contact with those organizations up front, seeking out ways to interact and engage with those companies and those contacts. There's a ton of available events virtually and in person, especially in the military community, that you can take advantage of and leverage it. There's, having the role I have, I can tell you for a fact that there are multiple opportunities from a virtual and in-person standpoint to interact with companies every single week, right? You could probably do an event every day if you wanted to. So keep, between what companies do themselves, what organizations do, what's available virtually, in person, after hours networking event. There's things on the weekends. There's so much that you can take advantage of, but be proactive and kind of set your own schedule up front. Don't wait to hear about something. Go out and search what's going on and what you can attend. And the same principles apply when it comes to following up with organizations. Try as best you can to be as prepared as possible and to reach back out, get feedback or follow up on any applications you've submitted, and try to get feedback on your resume, on your interviews. You may not be able to get specific feedback maybe from an employer, right? If you do have an official interview, because very rarely is an employer really going to like critique your interview if it's an official interview, right? And there's a lot of reasons for that, but generally you're just going to hear you're either going to receive an update as to being, not best qualified for the position, or you're going to move forward and be presented with an offer. But what you can do is there's plenty of opportunities to go through mock interviewing, having your resume reviewed with different, workshops and services and things like that, or just ask a recruiter, right, to just take a look at your resume and give you some feedback and stuff like that. And kind of take that all in and then proactively set up what you feel is going to work best for you. And the last thing, it kind of goes without saying, but, set up any type of networking you can do, whether it's in person, whether it's virtually, plugging into those relationships and the network that you've already built, especially if you've done a career in the service, right? Trying to see, okay, where are those individuals that I served with, that I worked alongside already, or if you've been out, right? Just keeping in touch with people that maybe you worked for previously, because your network will kind of expand significantly as people you maybe formerly worked with, right? They land at a new company. Well, now you have an employee referral at that company, right? Now you have a point of contact at that company. So it all helps, and it's all good to kind of look at, say, who do I know now? And then, make sure you're connected with them so that as they move, your network's going to be able to expand, on its own without you necessarily having to seek out somebody at a new organization. So now we're going to kind of go over a few things to avoid. I know there's kind of a lot on this. Maybe in the future, I'll break up this into a couple slides. But I think a lot of these can also kind of be grouped together. So we can kind of tackle some of, multiple selections here kind of in one comment. So Yari and Therese, I'm not sure who we wanted to have handle here. These at the beginning. I think we're going to start with Yari. So why don't you go ahead, and then I'm pretty sure I close it out again. But Yari, why don't we start with you?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll tackle these first two here. One, basically, don't rush the application process. This is your first interaction with recruiters, with hiring managers. And remember that first look at the resume, that initial screening takes about 10 seconds. And these things are usually picked up on, whether it's grammatical or structural errors, typos, maybe sloppiness of resume of sorts. I always say, just make sure when you're on different type of applicant tracking system, and for Leidos, it would be Workday, read all the directions, make sure that you're completing the employment history process, but also uploading a resume, making sure that, dates are aligning. If you're, going for a particular position, making sure you have some of those keywords that you see in basic qualification sections. You want to be in the yes basket rather than I'll take a look at this later, because everything's about timing, everything's about efficiency. And if it takes a little bit more time for that hiring manager who probably only has 10 minutes to kind of review a good amount of resumes, they automatically can pick out from just the structure of a resume, of the application, of how well aligned it is to that job specifically, to be like, yep, let's go ahead and set up a phone interview, which again tackles into that second bullet, avoiding using one generic resume. I am a big proponent of having maybe 2 or 3 different versions of your resume, especially if you've had different type of work experiences. We all know that we wear different hats in different places, and that could be a lot. And that doesn't mean that we have to jam pack everything in one. If you see that there's a job description that's tailored to maybe 1 or 2 of your skill sets, highlight that. Make sure you're taking your time to read the basic qualifications. Look at the preferred. Are there things on there, whether it's tools, whether it's software, maybe different type of systems, certifications that you can highlight on your resume. Here at Leidos, we're still looking at everything, not with just AI, but we're looking at resumes, one by one. So those are the things that call out to me, and quickly I can be like, yep, we're going to move forward with the screening, or I want to pass this person to a hiring manager. So don't be, shy about having different versions. Take the time early on. I promise you, it's the best foot forward when you're speaking to recruiters, when you're speaking to hiring managers. It's easier flow. And again, you want to be in the yes pile and not the maybe not pile.
All right, for the next point, don't apply to jobs that don't interest you just to get an application in the system. I think that a lot of people are under the impression that if you apply to many different jobs, that it gives you more visibility. But really on our end, if you're applying to a large number of positions and then you withdraw from several of those offers, we can see that. So that gives us the impression that you're not ready or serious to move forward with a career, or you're not applying with intent. So just be very mindful of the applications that you put in. If you visit our career page, there is a Leidos network that you can join, and you can submit your resume. It goes into our candidate database. This is without applying to a job, so you don't have to put that application in. In this candidate database, the recruiters can go in, search for keywords and find your resume that way. And it's, you know, a much better look on your interest. Don't get discouraged if you're not selected for a position, especially in these times. It's a very competitive market. So don't let that dissuade you. Keep going. If you're not getting responses, maybe just do a self audit. Make sure that you are matching the qualifications for the positions, but don't let it slow you down. Just keep trying. Don't assume that a recruiter or hiring manager will know military acronyms. Not everyone has been around the military or veterans. So when you are referring to these on your resume cover letter, spell it out first, put the acronym in parentheses, and then from there forward, you can use that acronym and they can refer back to that. This really should go without saying, just be smart. Don't forget to clean up social media content. And, you know, it could be viewed by potential employers as problematic, including posts, photos that you're tagged in, and or comments on public posts. An employer or recruiter may not be necessarily directly looking for your personal social media, but they may be searching for your professional profiles and run across anything that's out there. So just be mindful of that content. And with that, I will hand it over to Alex.
Thank you. Thanks, Therese. So I'll close this out again with the last three here. And I think I heard Therese say apply with intent. And I want to kind of really emphasize that. So, you know, have an intent behind every application. I kind of put it like this. You don't have to necessarily know if you would accept the job when you apply, right? But you want to make sure that if you're applying to a position, that it's a position that you're interested in, that you're qualified for, and that you have, you know, some way to follow up with. You know, as I said, you don't have to have every single answer or every single question you might have about the position answered before you apply. You might not even know if, you know, push came to shove, if you actually would accept it, but you should know if it's something, again, that you're interested in and that you're qualified for, because all the qualifications are going to be spelled out, you know, in writing on the job posting. But really the third part of that, where I said having some way or process to follow up with that position. It may be you already know somebody within the organization. You may reach out to somebody like myself who manages a military program. Maybe you do a live chat feature. Maybe you jump on a webinar and ask. Maybe you go on any type of virtual hiring event and you have that job ID number with you, and then you can ask in real time, hey, can you just look up where I stand on this position? There's a lot of ways now more than ever that you can interact directly with, representatives from organizations. And there's not one way that is, necessarily right or wrong. If you're finding that you're sending emails and you're not getting any kind of feedback, then maybe try a different approach, right? Try to catch somebody when they're doing a virtual hiring event or something like that. There's a lot of virtual chat based events or even video based events where you have like a captive audience, right? Where you have a recruiter, you have a company representative, and they're on this event from, one time, from the start to the finish, right? They're kind of a captive audience. So use that to, ask your questions and try to get some follow-up maybe on a specific position you've applied for. But I think a good way to get really frustrated with the job search in general is just to spend all day, every day applying to dozens and dozens of positions and then just just kind of leaving it at that. And then just hoping that somebody stumbles across your application and happens to reach out to you. Having a means to follow up after that. And ideally you can package it all together where you have somebody that can refer you, a recruiter or somebody in talent acquisition, that you have enough contacts that then you can apply with a tailored resume and you can provide that same tailored resume to your contacts within that same organization to help provide you some feedback on kind of what's going on. And the last couple items here kind of go along the lines of what I just said, right? So if don't spread yourself too thin, I highly recommend focusing in on a few organizations at a time. So if you're just beginning your job search, try to create it in such a way that you have, a handful of companies you're targeting, and this can shift, this can grow. You can replace one company with another as your job search kind of, moves forward, and you get better, you get kind of a better handle on things. But I find that being able to focus in on a specific, number of organizations that you're targeting, it allows you to then find those representatives with those companies, navigate kind of their application process, sign up for their job alerts, do all that. It allows you to kind of wrap your head around it a little bit, easier at first. And then as you move forward, you'll find that, okay, this is, this company X is doing things very similar to company Y. And so I kind of understand how this is working, right? Because you'll find as you move forward, a lot of the applications, the ways that you can create job alerts and things like that can start to be similar with the more companies you're kind of targeting. And the last thing here is what I kind of already mentioned. You may not have all your questions answered before applying, but what you can control, right? You have span of control, right? You can be concerned about a lot of things about the position, but what can you control? You can control if you meet the quals. You can control if you submit an application that shows how you meet those qualifications. And you can control who you can follow up with to get some feedback, right? But I find very often that I will hear from candidates who have maybe a very understandable question about a position, or maybe many questions about a position, right? And their expectation is they'd like to have everything answered and feel like great about it before they even submit an application. And realistically speaking, especially in today's market, but even before, that's just not really a realistic way to go about it. Because in the time it takes you as a candidate to get all your questions answered, there's probably, most definitely, other people who have applied. And there may even be somebody, right, who has moved from left to right in the process, right? And it is moving forward with, hiring manager review, interview, even job offer, right? So don't lose that time. If you're interested, if you're qualified, apply. Your questions will be answered as you go through the process. It seems a little counterintuitive sometimes, and I understand that. But if you have questions, right, as you move forward in the hiring process, in the life cycle of that position, and you're talking to the recruiter, you're talking to the hiring manager, make sure that by the end of that, right, when you've had a chance to speak with the recruiter, you have a chance to do an interview, that at that point you have all your questions answered. And if the company, if the manager, if the recruiter, if the people you're talking to cannot answer your questions by the time you get all the way through that process, then that should be pretty telling to you about that organization, or maybe it's a function of that particular contract or program. But I think that's a good way to kind of learn a little bit about the organization as you kind of go through it too. So with that being said, I think we're going to move forward here and want to be cognizant on time and allow some time for questions at the end. And I did want to show a demo of our career site. So what I'm going to do is just very briefly touch on some information about our organization. I'm going to let Yari and Therese talk a little bit about their particular business areas and sectors when we get to that slide. And then also if there's any locations they want to target or mention, that they're targeting in their current recruiting efforts, because, we're nationwide, worldwide, and there's positions all over the country, all over the world. We have employees, I think, in 43 different states and 50 plus different countries. So we'll kind of highlight a few of those when we get to that slide. But this is real quick, just kind of like a brief overview of the organization and our size and kind of the number of employees we have and annual revenue. We have seen significant growth over the last, I guess, 10, 11 years now. I talked about a name change, so I'll mention that really briefly. We are known as SAIC from February 1969 till the end of September of 2013, at which point in time we renamed ourselves Leidos and we spun off the company that is now SAIC. So we were pretty streamlined at that point. I think we're about $5 billion company. We had somewhere in the neighborhood of 17,000 total employees. So now, that was end of September 2013. We're now in end of May 2025. So you can see in, I guess, 11 plus years or so, the massive growth we've had. We've had major acquisitions there. We had a big merger in August of 2016, where we merged with a division of Lockheed Martin that allowed us to almost nearly double in size at that point. And then in 2020, we acquired a few organizations, and then moving forward in the next couple of years, acquired some more. I mentioned just a couple of weeks ago, or I think actually earlier this week, we closed on another acquisition of a smaller AI-based firm here that's based in Chantilly, Virginia. So that was our first, I think, acquisition in a couple or 2 or 3 years. But we've essentially, from a constant growth standpoint, been able to really continue to grow and become one of the largest and highest revenue generating information technology government contractors based here in Virginia. And then real quick, what our military program is, what Operation MVP is all about. And I think I had the website up before. It'll probably be on the last slide too. But it's really all about building relationships, building a pipeline, helping veterans, helping transitioning service members, spouses in their job search, and providing them a means to, for a potential opportunity here at Leidos, but also, big picture, understanding that we're not going to be able to hire everybody, especially with the number of applications we get. We're averaging between 70 and 90,000 applications a month right now. So just in the grand scheme of things, right? What can I do? What can we do to provide helpful advice to the community in general, while at the same time trying to promote, hiring as many veterans and spouses here at Leidos as we can. So, what I'd like to do here, if Yari and Therese, if you'd like to, if you have, maybe a couple minutes that you want to highlight any particular customers that you're working with right now, that are kind of listed here, and then we'll talk a little bit about the sectors and locations, and then we'll wrap it up with a demo. But let's start. I guess Therese, if you want to start. You mentioned the work you're doing in health and I think Navy. Do you want to talk about any of the customers you're kind of supporting in your current, the roles that you're filling right now and the programs you're supporting?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So one thing I really wanted to mention is I was so stuck and pigeonholed on just looking for positions under defense because that's what I knew. So when I came to Leidos, I did start with the defense group. And I transitioned over to the health and civil group. And so I had no idea that we had all of the, that we supported Department of Defense and federal agencies under this. So I primarily work with the Naval Health Research Center in San Diego. It's research on performance and readiness and how to improve that for the warfighter. So they actually travel on site, out in the fields, on the ships, and do the research. What is, sleep deprivation? How does that affect them? How can we improve gear? But under the Naval Health Research umbrella, we actually hold all but, I believe, one of the naval research contracts nationwide. So the other ones that I actually don't work with, but we have Naval Health Research at the sub base in Groton, San Antonio. We have it another location in Dayton. So really a lot of important work. And I know that along with the San Diego location, we've had that contract for over 20 years. So we have contractors that have been on there and retired. So it's a well-established, customer that we've had. Other parts of the health and civil sector, we also have contracts with the Department of Health and Human Services, Department of Energy, transportation, and also NASA. So it's really a wide range of opportunities that you can find under each sector. So just, I wanted to really stress that when you are looking for jobs, and there is an option to specifically choose the sector, have an open mind and look across there, because I actually personally was very surprised that we have the customers that we do in this. But yeah, that's where I work and what we cover.
Yeah, thanks,
Awesome.
Therese. And Yari, you want to cover a little bit about what you're recruiting for right now and the programs you support?
Yeah, very quickly. I mentioned I'm supporting the Leidos Innovation Center, which is the research and development wing of Leidos. So a lot of our customers tend to fall under DoD, and a lot of them being, Army, Air Force. We have positions over in Dayton, San Diego being a large hub, Arlington, New Mexico, in Albuquerque, also in Huntsville, Alabama. There's a large presence. A lot of the positions that we range from can be a lot of scientists, research scientists, specifically data scientists. Of course, with the full swing of AI and ML, you see a lot of machine learning engineers, optical engineers. Not limited only to engineering. There are other type of support. I think a lot of people tend to be like, well, I don't really have a background in engineering or in technology. There are other support, whether it's program management within those type of engineering subs that you can also support. I wanted to give you a little quick thing on the Leidos Innovation Center, but definitely, as Therese mentioned, you're able to down select on our website, whether it's health and civil that you want to look into to see what positions they have, or for Leidos Innovation Center, you'll see in their abbreviated link or Leidos Innovation Center that you can kind of see what positions that we have available.
Yeah, great. All right, so I'm going to mention real quick, there's a question here that I think we're going to cover in one of these slides. So I wanted to get to that. I do want to mention just really briefly about our executive leadership team, because we have 2 military spouses on our ELT. One is Liz Porter, who is the president of the health and civil sector. That's where Therese is representing right now. And the other is up all of our chain of command, which is our chief human resources officer, Leslie Fouch, is also a military spouse. Leslie was just on a panel last week at the Hiring Our Heroes Military Spouse Employment Summit, which was held at the United States Chamber of Commerce in Washington, D.C. It was live streamed, and there's a link of that entire recording that's up. I think it's just hiringourheroes.com, or sorry, hiringourheroes.org/the-word-watch. I believe it's up there if anybody would like to view it. And Leslie's panel was the very first panel that started the event. But highly recommend, you take a look at that if you'd like to. But I certainly wanted to plug both Liz Porter and Leslie Fouch being military spouses, and both are heavily involved in, the community for military spouses, working with organizations to support both spouses and military families. So I'm not going to spend too much time here about, because I wanted to move forward here. Yeah. So that was just a little bit about our revenue. So, we're a multi-billion-dollar company, obviously, we've continued to see growth and success, but I wanted to talk a little bit about locations here, because there was a question about being on-site or remote and like variation. So I know we don't have a ton of time, but I wanted Therese and Yari, if you both could just kind of mention like the roles that you have recruited for and are recruiting for now. What have you kind of seen as far as where the employees that you've hired over the years, right? Where have they ended up? Have they been working on site at a Leidos facility, remote, hybrid? And kind of what's your experience has been hiring here at Leidos? So why don't we start with, we'll start with Yari this time.
Yeah, absolutely. So I would say within the our division, it's 50-50 across. A lot of the positions that do require clearances will be on site. I mentioned a few of the states, whether it's California, Alabama, Ohio, New Mexico being kind of the central subs, Virginia, of where we're at. I would say with time, in the last couple of years, there has been that kind of crossover to more hybrid, whether it's 1 or 2 days, to allow employees with that flexibility. But for the most part, they are on site with a few options of hybrid depending on the work. But because it's a lot of it's cleared work, they do prefer folks to be on site.
Okay. And Therese, what about you?
Same with mine, actually. So San Diego Naval Health Research, and actually this goes across all of their programs. They are primarily on site. Out in San Diego, though, they do have remote work, but they have minimum days required. It's typically 1 to 2 days on site, and then you can work remote outside of that. But like I mentioned before, they also travel to the sites. And then my other locations for the federal agency, same because of the clearance requirement, they are also on site. But Leidos has several opportunities that are remote across the company. So yeah, I think that we definitely have that available, and not on our contracts, unfortunately, but yeah, they are out there.
Yeah, I would say as a general, as a general rule for Leidos as a whole, at least as it stands right now, most of our indirect work, so if it doesn't require you to be at a customer site full time, doesn't require, there's not a clearance tied to it or anything like that. Most of those positions are going to be fully remote, or at the very least hybrid, right? For some of our like senior leaders and executives, okay, they're going to be full time at an office, right, at a Leidos facility. But for most of the indirect role, it is remote or hybrid. Where you see customer site or you see the need to report to a Leidos facility is generally if it's going to be driven by, customer interaction, customer meetings, or again, senior executive leaders who need to, who are going to be meeting more often and having more face-to-face time with, customers, their subordinates, other people in senior and executive leadership roles. So jumping forward here, was there any specific overseas work that Therese or Yari that or any overseas locations either of you are recruiting for right now?
No, not right now.
Okay.
I don't have any.
Therese, what about you? Okay.
No.
I'll just mention, we're going to get to it when we show our career site, but you can always take a look at the country as a filter. So if you are looking, or you're a mill spouse and, you're moving or you're going to be moving overseas or anything like that, you can take a look at the particular country on our career site, and you can even make what is essentially create like a job alert just for that country, which I recommend, especially if we don't have a lot of positions in it. And I'll give you an example when we jump over there, but just off the top of my head, I think like Japan, maybe we have like 9 positions last time I looked, right? So you could just make a job search just for positions in Japan, right? Because you don't really need to do a whole lot more filtering if we have a small, a relatively small number of positions. And suddenly if you see one day you're getting like 50 positions, okay, well, we won something or we plussed up, right? Then you can go in and you can adjust that job search to get more filtered. And this is just kind of closing out. We kind of covered our sectors already. We have obviously health and civil with Therese represented here. Yari's representing our Leidos Innovation Center, which kind of goes up through the corporate side, and commercial, international, and corporate are kind of all one big team right now. So that's where kind of the corporate side of the house fits as far as the sectors go. But essentially, DoD, the intelligence community, federal civilian market, healthcare, and then work in the commercial space and international space. That's basically what's covered here in all of our different sectors. Primarily federal government, work, with the exception of a couple large programs on the commercial side, dealing with energy and airport security primarily, and then work on the international side, which is kind of firewalled off from us. But we do have subsidiaries that in Australia and the UK that do some international work. So I'm going to bring this back up when we do a couple questions. But if we have time, if we can maybe go 5 or 10 minutes past 2 p.m. Eastern, if that's okay with everybody that's on the panel, then we probably have time to do a quick review of our career site, if that's okay with everybody. And then we'll tackle the questions after that. So let me do this. I'm going to leave this up for just a moment. And then I'm going to bring up our career site. And then Therese had provided me a job to kind of take a look at, which I want to bring up here in a moment. And I'll certainly, if actually Yari and Therese, if you don't mind, while I'm bringing that up, if you'd like to put in your email or the best way you can, best way for anybody to contact you in the chat, and I'll definitely pull back up that slide in a little bit here. So
Alex, while you're doing that, can I ask a question that came through the Q&A? About
Absolutely.
one of the comments you made about the qualifications, this individual is wondering if you should consider applying to a job if you only meet 80% of the listed qualifications. Would that be a good general rule?
Yeah, Yari, Therese, you want to tackle that one? And I'm going to bring up the career side. What do either of you think about 80%?
Oh, that's kind of a tough question. So when you're looking at the basic qualifications, there are going to be um, some hard and fast guidelines. But I think if you went there, there are some of the qualifications. I would say yes. I'll just put it that way. So if you meet the basic education, or you're at least close to that, or have equivalent experience to that, and maybe you don't have 10 years of that experience, but you have 8, but you have certifications, and I would say absolutely. I would go ahead and apply. They may be a little flexible on that. Maybe you're stronger in one area and not in the area that they specified in the job posting. So, it could be a consideration. So yeah, I would encourage you to do that.
I agree. I think 80% absolutely just, apply. As Therese mentioned, whether it's maybe a few off on the years, there could be some flexibility. There are some hard and fast, whether that's, hey, must have experience in, said systems or tools. And for example, if you don't have that, that might be a little bit more reserved on that end. But I think 80% is a good rule of thumb.
Yeah, thank you. So I'm going to pull up this this position that Therese had shared with me. But before I do, I did want to kind of just share the filters and share something. Therese, you had mentioned previously about navigating by sector and stuff like that. And hopefully I tried to zoom in a little bit to make this a little easier to see. Keep in mind that most of our web pages are kind of optimized for mobile viewing. So if you're using like a widescreen monitor like I am, you're going to end up with a fair amount of like empty space on the left and right. That's just they're generally designed right to view on a phone or on a tablet. So Therese had mentioned, how you can look based on sector. So, you can go here and see what we have, based on each sector, which, is certainly helpful. Again, if you have a background in health and you want to look for positions in health, well, you can boil it down, to 156 positions just by doing that. Or if you're interested in positions like Yari had talked about supporting the Leidos Innovation Center, you can go right here and just click on that. One recommendation I always have, if you're kind of just trying to figure out where to start or the best way to start paring down start trying to better target specific positions. And I zoomed out a little bit just because it's gonna, I wanted to expand some of these filters. Location and clearance are the best ways to do this because they are both qualifiers that are gonna either, greatly expand or limit, right, the number of positions you can look at. And when you're just starting out, really like limiting the number of results you get is a good thing. You don't want to create job searches that get you 50 or 100 positions, right? You want to get it narrowed down so that you can actually realistically review the positions and apply if you meet the qualifications. So start with things like location and clearance, because again, if you have a secret, you want to make sure you're looking at positions at secret, public trust, none. You can do that. And then you can then go in and select specific states, cities. You can select multiple ones. You can make different job searches and job alerts based on different locations, right? So if you want to see what's available in, the Colorado area, or you want to see what's available out in, down in Augusta, Georgia, or you want to look at, the Fort Meade, Annapolis Junction, Columbia, Maryland area. You can create as many different searches as you want, especially if you have multiple locations you're looking for, or if there are customers and types of work that are going to bring you potentially to a certain location, you may want to target that as well. But clearance and location is a good way to be able to narrow down the number of results you're getting. And then once you do that, just scroll down here, take a look at what we call job category, and then select your job category. And the reason I don't recommend, in my opinion, the reason I don't recommend you start with job category unless you know you're looking at something like in Intel, or, you know, if you're only looking at positions in, you know, language analysis or business development, right? If you're kind of trying to do a broader search to start, or you have multiple different competency areas, trying to narrow it down to one job level at the beginning is going to give you so many results. It's somewhat difficult to even know where to begin with that. So again, to kind of recap, location and clearance are a good way to kind of narrow things down. Sector is another excellent way to narrow things down. And don't feel like you need to make one search, you know, with us, and that one search you're going to save, and then that's what you're locked into. Make different searches. You can delete a search if you don't like the results. You can modify it, you know, spend a little bit of time so that ideally you get yourself set up in a way that you're getting, you know, results that are actionable, and then you can always leave these searches running indefinitely. You can go, you know, you can secure employment, but you can still keep these searches running. So that way in the future, a position comes across, you know, you're not actively looking, you're passively looking. Maybe you're not looking at all, but you're like, that's too good to pass up, right? And then you've kept in touch, you have contacts to follow up with and stuff like that. So Therese was kind enough to provide, I think this was the job posting. So I want to just let her and maybe Yari speak a little bit about it, and then we'll answer whatever questions we haven't hit on already. So let me pull this one up and let me know if everyone's able to see it okay. And then Therese, was there anything you wanted to mention about kind of this top section here as it relates to this particular position? And then we can kind of just cover some of the basics of it, just to kind of give everyone some insight into like, what do these different, you know, what do these different sections mean? Like, again, somebody just asked, can I apply if I meet 80%, right? Like, what are some of the best practices and, you know, that you would recommend when you're kind of going through reviewing a job posting?
So the job number is very important when you're reaching out to recruiters. If you're looking at a network admin and you say, well, I'm really interested in that network admin position in Chantilly, there may be 50 of them out there. So this will, you know, ensure that you are referring to the correct position that you're applying to. Remote type, this is a hybrid remote. This is where you'll see it. And so it has a location. You have to be local to San Diego or relocate. And hybrid remote, there is some remote, but you're still going to have to report on site. But one that I think is really important is on all of my positions, the clearance does say secret, but you do not have to be cleared to get the job, to be considered at all. And you actually, and we can show you, you know, later as we go down, it is listed in the basic qualifications. The way that you can tell the difference is if it says, if it has a clearance up on top, you go to basic qualifications, it should say ability to obtain. So that tells you you do not have to be actively cleared. You just need the ability to obtain that clearance, and we will sponsor that. There's no way to tell up on that top section, but that's why it's really important just to go into the basic qualifications and see, you know, the details on that. Within the job description, I also have kind of a brief explanation on what the hybrid reporting looks like, what the requirement is. As Alex mentioned before, it's customer driven. It could change at any time, but you know, at this time, that's what it's going to be, 2 days a week on site. And then it has a statement on there, the requirement can change from there, but that's what's to be expected for the position. In the basic qualifications, if you go down a little bit further, it also states U.S. citizenship required, little things like that that are specific to the position, the ability to obtain. It's the last bullet point under basic qualifications. Due to federal contract restrictions, candidate must be a U.S. citizen and able to obtain a secret clearance. So if you are not cleared, never been cleared, you can still apply and be hired for this opportunity. Yeah, and I think yeah, those were the really, important points that you need to pay attention to on these. And then of course, within the job description, it gives you kind of under primary responsibilities, it gives you kind of an idea of the day-to-day as well. So you kind of get a picture and some insight into what you would be doing in that role. And then the pay range is there at the bottom. And like I mentioned, it's such a large range, 85 to 153. No matter what posting you're looking at, whether it's Leidos or otherwise, you see a spread like that, it's likely going to be the full band, and probably driven by the transparency mandates. So not meant to be misleading or misrepresentation at all. I know that some people get confused when they see that and they say, well, but you said I was going to make 153. Well, no, there's a little blurb underneath that kind of explains it. But yeah, absolutely no ill intent behind that. It's just all the information. So really important, again, to have your salary range in mind when you're looking and applying for these positions.
Real quick, Therese, can you talk a little bit about the posting date? And this is a kind of a general question that's like, I see a lot, is how long are, positions up for? So, we have our posting dates listed in all of our positions, so anyone can see how long is a position up for. And what do you recommend? Like if somebody sees a position that's been open for, a really long time, like months or something, I know that's pretty rare, but like, what do you recommend? Should they still apply, or what should they kind of use as a general rule of thumb when they look at that posting date?
Well, the postings, they need to be up for a minimum of 3 days. As far as we typically, if we haven't found a candidate on that after 90 days, we'll either reevaluate, see if we need to change anything on the job descriptions and repost, or maybe the position just wasn't funded and we didn't move forward, and so we'll close it. So you won't typically see things that are out there for months, hopefully. If you see an original posting date and maybe it's been 2 months, just keep in mind that there have been other applicants, and it may be further along in the process. So they may already be in the interview process, but they haven't hired yet. So that goes back to, don't be discouraged. If you came in later in the game and applied then, if you see it up for a couple months, 2 or 3 months, absolutely. Go ahead and apply. Maybe they haven't found the right fit, and maybe you're it. So if you don't try, you're not getting it. So if it is posted, I encourage you to put it up there. I know that sometimes we have requisitions that are posted that are in support of anticipated work or proposals. And usually that will say it within the job description, this is for anticipated work. And you may see those posted for a longer period of time. In that case, if you want something right now and you want something active, then that would not be one that you would apply to. But yeah, definitely encourage you, if it's open and it's posted, put that application in.
Okay. Before we get off this page, exit this page, I want to share up here. So you can save a job, right, individually, or if we go back here and you do put in some, you use some filters and things like that, you can create a job alert right here. So I'll just kind of show you what that looks like. So say I just, I'll pick something very broad, but say I was looking for positions in, just Huntsville, Alabama, which we are going to have quite a few. You can obviously use other filters on top of this, but just so that everybody's aware of how relatively easy it is, once you have enough filters or also or keyword searches, you just go here to create a job alert. And, it's as simple as your email, how often you want it, and then you can create your own unique name for those job notifications. I highly recommend, if you're going to be doing this with multiple organizations, put the company's name in the job notification, just to kind of, it'll come from, you'll see like Leidos email, but if it comes, from like Workday or something like that, it's just helpful to put, Leidos jobs, Huntsville, anything that helps you in your own personal, right, job search. better identify like what positions are going to be coming through on this specific, job notification. Because ideally you're creating these with multiple organizations and even multiple job alerts. So you want to very quickly be like, okay, this is, defense jobs in this location, or these are health jobs in, in San Diego, right? And with Leidos. And then you can really easily know, okay, now I know what I'm looking at. And you can select the cadency of how frequent you want to receive them, based on whatever works for you. And even if you don't, say you have a really unique like search and you don't find anything is posted, that can be tough because like you still need at least some filter, right? But even if it's something where you only find like, one position, or if you create a keyword that doesn't come up with any results, you can still save it. So, if you just want to, if you have some really specific criteria, and you just want to see if anything ever pops up, you can still do that. I mentioned Japan before. It looks like we have 18 positions now. So, you can always get more involved with the filters if you want. But, for a lot of the locations outside of the United States, you may not necessarily need to get too in the weeds. But it's still helpful just to put something together so that you can receive any new positions that are available. And you can see a lot of these are supporting health, our military family life counseling program and TRICARE. So with that being said, I know we're running over, so I want to pull back up the slides and pull back up our contact info, and then see if there were any questions that we didn't tackle yet, that maybe Yari or Therese or myself can answer real quick before we wrap up here. I think we answered one question in the Q&A, Susan. So we'll
This is
look in the chat,
fantastic.
see if there's anything else. Yeah.
Absolutely. I'm going to throw out a question that was asked regarding skill bridge opportunities outside of hiring our heroes. If
Yeah.
the dates don't align with an individual's separation time or retirement, is it possible to take advantage of that through Leidos?
Yeah, so I think that was Maria, and I think she said she had to jet, but hopefully she can reach out to me. But just for everyone's edification, Hiring Our Heroes does also offer off-cycle fellowships. So you don't have to necessarily meet one of their 3 established cohorts to be involved. I would still recommend, and this is for anybody who's listening that's going to participate in it. And for Therese and Yari, if you ever come across anybody who's asking, I still recommend, even if somebody doesn't fit within one of the 3 established cohorts with the corporate fellowship program, they can go through as an off-cycle fellow. It doesn't like stop them from pursuing skill bridge roles directly with employers too. And I recommend doing both, right? Because ideally, if a service member is accepted, as an off-cycle corporate fellow, and they approach an employer and they say, these are my dates, right? That employer can usually host them through the fellowship program, which can kind of help to streamline things quite often. And if the employer is like, no, we're going to put you through our own skill bridge program, right? Because we want you for, a longer period of time or for whatever reason, right? Then, they can always go that route if necessary. But I recommend leveraging, right, what Hiring Our Heroes does for anybody who's searching for skill bridge, because they do so much, and Hiring Our Heroes provides so much more like promotion and marketing of any service member. And it still doesn't mean that if you're going through skill bridge, you can't go out and engage with employers on your own behalf, because you can, but you have that added benefit of a, massive organization helping to promote you kind of in addition to that. So kind of work both sides of it is kind of my suggestion, but absolutely look at the off-cycle program. And it's a real, like I said, it's a real streamlined way for a company to be able to host you using that existing program without necessarily having to create a separate skill bridge program of instruction if one doesn't already exist for the type of, skill bridge role that maybe they're looking at you for individually.
Perfect. And I guess the last question might be, how would you recommend finding the specific recruiter that would work best for you, whether it's a particular sector you're looking for or a particular background? I'll
let Yari, Therese, and you can kind share, how you're sharing the positions you're recruiting for. I know a lot of times recruiters will push stuff out on LinkedIn, or they'll make, public messages about hiring events that they're doing or something like that. Do either of you use that kind of avenue to help promote your positions or promote anything that, you're supporting as far as hiring that kind of makes it clear, hey, like this is what I'm hiring for, and put it out in a public forum? Or do you just kind of have individuals come through the positions you're posting? What kind of works best for each of you?
So on my LinkedIn profile, I have the information and the links over to the performance and readiness division. And then I post my jobs on there as well, and links to those applications. So if I've had those that have found me through, Leidos, and they're looking for epidemiologist jobs. So yeah, I have all of that. And I think the majority of recruiters will have the types of positions that they're working on, or the division or business that they support that are on there, so they're searchable. You can also look in your network, see who they're connected to. It'll show on LinkedIn, suggested connections, so to go through there as well. Or if you find a Leidos employee, ask them, hey, who is a good health and civil sector recruiter that I can connect with? And typically we'll all, share information like that, so that we can connect everyone with the right network.
Fantastic. Well, on that note, let me say thank you to all of you. The information you shared today is priceless, and I feel like it's also very actionable. And for that, we are very grateful. I'd like to invite all participants in this session, as well as affiliates and colleagues of those who are attending, to join us on June 5th at 4 p.m. We will be offering our third session for the Officer Women Leadership virtual series. And we have many other upcoming events that can be found on our website at www.militaryals.org. On that note, I would like to say thank you all for joining us today, and I wish you a fantastic day.